Welcome back, Tarnished. Today we're ranking the top 10 boss themes or songs from the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC soundtrack. Let me know your top themes down below. Let's get started with one honorable mention. So my only honorable mention is the Divine Beast Dancing Lion OST. This is an intricately woven piece clearly inspired by the likes of the Sekiro soundtrack merged with the bombast of the main game Elden Ring soundtrack. Personally, I'm just not as huge of a fan of this Sekiro soundtrack, but for those who are, this will very likely be near the top of your list. It is a masterful version of that style and brings a unique flair to the OST that isn't exactly present across a lot of the game, which stays in kind of a similar vein. I particularly like this constantly escalating section right here. Now that the honorable mention is out of the way, let's get into the meat of the top 10, starting with number 10, Elder Inquisitor. This is the only mini-boss found on the list, and for good reason. It is such a filthy, girthy sound full of this foreboding and ominous deep voices and cello and violins. It could have easily slotted in for the likes of Rykard or Midra, bosses that are full of disgust and fear. It's kind of strange though, as I'm not sure this OST really fits the vibe of the boss fight itself, but hey, I'm glad to have this banger. I'm gonna be completely honest with you, fam squad. I'm not really sure who Saint Trina is. I don't think I found her yet in the game. I know it's the last OST in the soundtrack, so it might be after the last boss. I do, however, know that it's done by Yuka Kitamura, I believe, and she is the genius behind many of the best FromSoft OSTs. I mean, I'm talking like serious bangers, like the Dark Souls 3 classics, like Suralan, like the Dark Souls 3 main theme. It's so sad that she's moving on, but her magical flair is left on the last track of the one and only Elden Ring DLC as a final farewell. So I listened to this one straight off the OST on YouTube and was unsurprisingly in love. While it might not quite hit the highs of the best Yuka Kitamura soundtracks, that's an extremely high bar to hit, it still packs a huge emotional punch in a short and subdued track. I am particularly enamored with this chord change, and the slow introduction of slightly more and more layers. I only wish that it was longer so I could bask in Yuka's glow for one last time. I think some of the mixing on the Elden Ring OST was just a little bit off. Some of that might just be the fact that these are MP3s and the quality isn't that great, but things can get muddy, hard to distinguish, and not feel quite as big as the likes of Dark Souls 3. Now, none of that impacts the beautiful songwriting and my appreciation for the songs, but I just wish things were a little bit clearer from time to time. The reason this is coming up here is because Bloodborne is such an amazingly horror-tinged soundtrack that is just so clear. And surprisingly, this is one of the few bosses on the soundtrack where I can feel the bass. Everything's coming through clearly here, and the soundscape feels massive. This song is matching that full-blown terror of Bloodborne and fits a fully terror-filled boss. Just listen to this. Holy God, that is Bloodborne if I've ever heard it. With that out of the way though, this song is long and continuously upping the ante for disturbing. While it might not have a ton of distinguishable motifs that I just get locked in my head, it might be the most masterful atmosphere building songs in the entire game. It's locked in that atonal nightmare. And this specific section actually bucks that melody complaint. I can't get enough of this bad boy, and how it's filled to the brim with, how you say, beauty and horror. The biggest point in favor of this beautiful yet surprisingly calm OST is the subdued harp arpeggios that give such a distinct flavor to the putrescent knight and his battle. I love when the OST leans into a very unique element of a character and reflects that powerfully within the OST, and that chord change here, oof. Love the organ here. It makes this boss feel so elegant. Strangely, I don't find it to be the most fitting with this type of boss, as it feels more like the iconic sword battles of our history from FromSoft, like with Melania, Lady Maria, or Sir Alan. In fact, this may be my favorite possible type of Souls OST. Melancholic, beautiful, epic, intertwined, pacing strings and choirs. And there are so many different sections that pull you in, from the intro to this choir breakdown, and the whole second half, to be honest. And hearing the Melania call out with another rot-related boss is a fantastic touch. Bale definitely has the grandest and most intense of the tracks, invoking some heroic chord progressions and huge horn-laden hits. I did give a very minor demerit to the OSTs that didn't really feel connected with the boss as heavily as others. For example, Romina's didn't really perfectly match, but this song could not augment the battle more perfectly than it does. We're getting to the point in the list where I can't really call out particular moments in the song because every section and part has something to latch onto, whether it's distinct, memorable, evocative, forlorn string leads, or a huge world-shattering outro filled with despair and victory. Time for the most infectious and addictive theme in the DLC. I cannot stop playing this one section on loop in my brain. This is a very Dark Souls 3 OST, and I say that as a huge compliment. I felt like FromSoft was going through each of their eras of games and covering all the bases. We had those classic Elden Ring style tracks on this DLC, and as I'd mentioned, we have had Bloodborne and Dark Souls 3 callouts, and in the more subdued tracks, it's kind of sounded like Dark Souls 1. And then the Sekiro callout from Dancing Beast. The constant cascading of chords and frantically paced strings make this the song that actually stood out the most to me from my first listen, and I love how this song feels quite literally like it is always building to something bigger. Before we get to my top 3, I did just release an EP. If you guys are interested, check out this song. I'll give you a little ditty here. And now, to the top 3. soon as this track starts, you know you're in for something special, and thank God it's attached to one of the best bosses in the game. What really stood out to me in this one is how it's this twisted, perverted version of Radagon's theme, how it slowly unfolds like the mystery of the Shadowkeep, and how it continuously gets better, like FromSoft's catalog. But seriously, at this point in the list, it's best to just appreciate the song. It feels like every time I listen, the more I enjoy it, and I discover a new little tidbit to be addicted to. When that happens, you know you have longevity with a beautiful song. In a year, this might even top the list, but for now, it's at number 3. By far the biggest shock of the DLC, a gank NPC boss has no right to go this hard. And the dialogue over the song makes it way more intense. But this somber tone coinciding with the heartbreaking section of the story is just so much. One of the only songs where I actively had to turn up the volume just to hear more. And if I had to pick one, this was the most emotionally evocative. I felt so much listening to this, and I still do right now listening to it while I speak to you. It's one that adds so much to the battle in context, and to that it gets some bonus points for me, putting it slightly above Mesmer. But number 1 has to be actually cannot believe I haven't seen anybody mention this, but the Promised Consort Radahn's motif very clearly pulls from Gehrman's theme to me. Just listen here. All in all, I haven't beat this boss quite yet. Doing another playthrough, adjusting my build before I really give another attempt. In the meantime, I've chose to listen to this OST all the way through, and this song is just the perfect confluence of Radahn's previous theme with something way more majestic and epic, and holy shit, the first phase is just insane here. The second half also has some really amazing, interesting chordal choices, a huge build-up and choir break. It's long, it's dense, it's full of majesty, makes me think of Gale, and the grandiosity and love and hatred makes you feel the entire spectrum of emotions. This has claimed itself as an all-time Lands Between banger. Thank you all so much for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you have a great day. Check out my video on the top 10 hardest bosses of the DLC right here.